listening to us sing together, I realized that I need this. I need to be together with other people who will sing the same songs with me. I'm not unlike most people. I like music. I sing in the shower. I do. My days of being a rock star have long since passed me by, and I recognize that were it not for coming together and doing this, I don't know if I would sing praise to God as much as I get to. This teaches me ways to do it so that when I go away from here, I can do it. There's a reason why we are to gather together. And so in the midst of your busy schedules and all of the other things that go on, make sure that you continue to find your way back to a group of people that will sing praise to God together. Okay? I want to pass this on. We are like this close to reaching our $25,000 goal for Advent Conspiracy. We're just short of it. And so if you have been still thinking about giving to Advent Conspiracy, or you forgot, or whatever, there's still time before we kind of wrap up the books for this year and dispense the money to all the people that need it. It's going to be pretty exciting. But if you want to continue to give, you certainly can. We will take it. So we're starting kind of a new series today. It sort of began last week, but really it's mostly today. And I really, I sat around a lot now thinking. Most of you, none of you care how I go about deciding what I'm going to say on a Sunday. Okay? Who cares? But I actually do have a process that I go through every week to try to decide what it is that I'm going to say. And most of the time, I try to start off with a single sentence that I then work away from, and I figure out what to say. After I figure out the sentence. Well, that happens when I start a new series also. And so this, I can't, he did. It's going to make more sense over the weeks to come. I hope it does anyway. But this battle that we all live with of saying to ourselves, I can't do that. That's beyond me. That's too hard. I don't want to do that. Stop asking me to do that. It's pretty funny. If you are not a young adult anymore, you are not pestered by Simon. Simon, man, he is on fire right now at encouraging young adults to come and join the young adult fellowship. And so if you have the look of a young adult, he is all over you, okay? and it's really funny because the conversation goes something like this: "Sure you can." "And I can't." "Sure you can. Come and join us." I can't." "Yeah, you can." "No, I can't." "Yeah, you can, and I'm going to keep telling you that you can until you do." It's interesting. That's a battleground for all of us. of facing the I can'ts and I can, and then theologically, when we say I can't, understanding that above and beyond everything else, Jesus did. And that changes everything. There's a connection between all of that. And so we'll look at that over the next few weeks together. We're going to look today at a parable of Jesus. Now, parables in the Bible, they are short stories. Sometimes the story is only 1 or 2 sentences long, and it becomes a parable. Parables are short stories that Jesus told to help his hearers understand a spiritual or a moral truth, but to understand it from God's perspective. That's sort of the simplest definition of what a parable is. The word itself is a combination of a couple of words that kind of lead us to understand that a parable usually has a comparison in it. And so Jesus takes something that is unfamiliar, tells a story about something familiar, and then points them back to the truth. But sometimes in the Bible, even parables can be a little difficult to understand. And if you have read your Bible at all, you've stumbled across parables. And you probably said to yourself, I don't get it. What's he trying to say? And that's the joy of being able to study the Bible. The story we're going to look at today has been called the parable of the wedding banquet. Like if you have headings in your Bible, those chapter headings, for the record, those are not written in the original text. Those have been added on by Bible interpreters through the ages to help us understand what this is about. And so this one is usually titled The Parable of the Wedding Banquet. I think a more accurate title would be The Parable of the Wedding Reception. That helps us understand the setting a little better. Now, you know that moment, many of us have gone through this, that moment when the bride and groom, after the ceremony has happened, and then they have this grand appearance where all of the family and friends are waiting for them, you know, and they clap and they cheer and they walk in, and like lots of weddings now have these dances, you know. Are you guys going to walk in dancing? Oh, it's a secret. Oh, I can't wait. Okay? You know, it's one of those things that happens, and they come into family and friends, and it's this moment where they are officially recognized by everybody as husband and wife. It's pretty momentous. Now, as a minister, I will tell you, I have been to hundreds of wedding receptions. I tried to count up how many weddings I have done over my lifetime. And I have done well in excess of 300 weddings. Dara looks at me and goes, "Dude, you're old." Wow. Yeah. Over 300 wedding ceremonies I have performed. And for the record, when you hear me talk about, I don't like weddings. Not particularly. The ceremony is all right, but it's like, I've told you this before, it's like, what is there enjoyable about standing up in front of people that are not paying any attention to what you're saying? That's what the minister does. Blah, 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 blah. Isn't she beautiful? Blah, 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 blah. Why is he on his phone? Blah, blah, blah. You know, that's the wedding ceremony while I talk. I am sorry. That was such a great look. Um, anyway, I've been to hundreds of receptions. The receptions have ranged from super simple, like my own. Mine was a super, and Wanda's. We had this simple reception that had church punch. Some of you have grown up going to church. You know what church punch is. You know, it's fruit punch made from syrup. And we have church punch and mints and peanuts and a cake. That was it. That was it, in our church fellowship hall. Aaron and Chris's wedding was a lot like that. It was great. Okay, so I've gone to a bunch of them that are simple, although nobody does a simple one anymore. That is so gone out of style. And I've gone to super extravagant receptions. I've done weddings where at the reception they hand out a menu. And you get to choose from the menu all of the different entrees and all of the different sides and, while you're there. Oh my goodness. I've been to receptions. Some of my favorites, baked potato bar. Really? Baked potato bar. Out in California, now they can do them here now also, but one of the biggest weddings that I did, their reception was catered by the In-N-Out food truck. In-N-Out Burger. They had a whole row of In-N-Out Burger food trucks right there, and you could walk up and get your burger and fries and a Coke. I thought that was pretty sweet. There's one wedding in here that I did. Parents are here, the kids are not, but it was like catered by Domino's Pizza. Domino's. It was great. And one recently that I did, I really liked this one. Babes. Catered by Babes. I want that invitation. Yeah, it was good. I really like. So yesterday, I'm preparing for this, and I see on television there is some girl. There's a news thing that they were doing, and she was talking about her wedding and how it's going to be. And they asked her, well, what's going to be at the reception? The reception is being catered by Costco because she wants Costco hot dogs at her wedding. Costco hot dogs. Wow. Wouldn't you like to be the parent that had to foot that bill as opposed to the catered meal? Okay. Today's parable begins this way. I want you to be thinking about it because it really is the parable of the wedding reception, not exactly the ceremony. And I'm gonna walk you through it a little bit before we actually read a couple of parts of it. But it begins by saying the kingdom of heaven is like a king who prepared a wedding banquet or a wedding reception for his son. That's the setting where Jesus is going to now try to take something familiar, which is a wedding reception, and teach something unfamiliar, which is a truth about God buried in this story. So before we look at it, though, I want to remind you of a fundamental belief that I have shared with you as my friends here for nearly 30 years. It has come up in numerous places, numerous times, but it is a belief that I have. I will tell you, it's not every pastor and not every theologian shares this same belief. This one is mine. I'm not alone. There are others who believe this, but it is not exclusive, and there are others who would go, that's not true. But this is how I see it. I believe that when Jesus or the other New Testament authors, those who have written the different letters in the New Testament or gospel accounts, when they write or they speak about the kingdom of God or the kingdom of heaven, I don't think they are talking about a destination. I don't think they are talking about a location. Maybe indirectly, but I don't think that is the primary meaning of what they are talking about when they speak about the kingdom of heaven. Nope. I believe that when the Bible speaks of the kingdom of heaven, it speaks as the kingdom being any place, anywhere, where the authority and the wisdom of God is ruling. Anywhere, anytime, any space where the kingdom is referred to and where the authority and the wisdom of God is boss. Now, you could ask, I think, and it would be fair, is the kingdom of heaven right in this building today? You know what? I want to say, yeah. But it would be largely determined by the hearts of the people that are sitting here. Okay? Because this is where Jesus resides. And if the wisdom and authority of Jesus is ruling in your life, and you have come to sit here with the rest of us, you bet this is the kingdom of heaven. Right here, right now. Now, I believe that. There are other theologians who would go, no, wait a minute. And I respect their position. But I hold to this one because it just makes more sense to me. Today's story is found in Matthew chapter 22. If you have your Bible, you can follow along. But I'm going to sort of paraphrase the beginning or the setting of this parable for us, and then we'll look at a couple of verses in it as we close. The story goes like this. There's a king who is throwing a wedding banquet for his son, and he told those who were invited, they had sent out invitations, much like we do in our weddings, sent out the invitation for people to come, but the people that he sent the invitation to refused to come. They just didn't come. They go, we're not coming. Then the king sent servants out to tell them again. He says, wait, come. The food is ready. The Costco hot dogs are warm. We're ready. Come in. But the parable says that those that were invited ignored the invitation. And not just ignored the invitation, they started giving lame excuses why they were not going to show up. Not just, I'm not going, but here's why I'm not going. I've got to do this. I'm going over here. I've got something else to do. Those people that were invited in this story, they even attacked the messengers and killed them. Now, make-believe story, okay? This isn't a little history story. This is a parable. The messengers that went out to invite people in, they got killed. They said, stop inviting us. The king, when he found out that that was done, he paid them back and killed them. And burned down their whole city. Okay, this is a king that's got a lot invested in his own son's wedding. The king said that those who were invited did not deserve to come. Ha! I invited you. You didn't want to come. You made excuses. You don't even deserve to be here. And then the king told his servants to go out into the streets and invite anyone they could find to come to the wedding reception. Sort of the ultimate, I'm going to show you. I'm going to invite anybody, everybody. They're going to come. Now, Here are a couple of my thoughts about this parable. And I've got a few now. Parable interpretation is one of those things where you got to be careful you don't extend too much interpretation to it. But when I read this one, I have a bunch of different thoughts when I read through this parable. One of them is this. Have you ever noticed how much in the Bible Jesus talks about or shows up at a party? He does this on multiple occasions. He is not afraid of parties. He likes going. And I wonder, do you think Jesus had a good time? I mean, have you ever thought about that? That when he shows up at the party, or is he like me? When the pastor shows up at a party, you go, oh, Pastor Buzzkill is here. Okay, and that's sort of the attitude that a lot of people have when the God guy shows up at the fun party, and it's like, oh man, we can't have as much fun. He's here. Is that what happened when Jesus showed up? Or when Jesus showed up at a party, they all went, hey, Jesus is here. Let's get the party rocking, because that guy Jesus is here. I got to tell you, I hate the image we give off sometimes that being a follower of Christ or being a member of a church is dull and boring. I don't like that. Now, I think there are expectations that we have being followers of Jesus, of things that we do and we don't do, even at a party. But just because you don't do this doesn't mean that you can't have a fantastic time with people. And yet, we so often give off the impression that we are, can't do those things. Better off not going. That's just one of my thoughts. Here's another thought that I have when I look at this parable. This is a story about a wedding banquet and how the king actually sent servants out twice to get somebody to come. I had one of my good friends in high school when he got married. It was a guy that I played high school football with, and we were friends in high school. He was a senior, I was a senior, but he was this super quiet, introverted guy, great big, great football player. And a couple of years after high school, he started dating a girl and they got married. And it was so sad because his father, the guy's father, called up all of his old high school friends and asked all of us, hey, would any of you be willing to be his best man? He really doesn't have any friends left over from high school. Really, that is so sad to think about. This guy invites people to come to the wedding reception. They don't come, and he goes out and invites other people. He does this twice. In the beginning, and when the dinner was ready. Now, to me, as somebody that studies stories in the Bible, and lots of Bible teachers would say that the primary reason that this parable is in there is to help the original hearers understand that the first people that were invited to come to the wedding reception are really symbolic of the Jews who were first invited into God's kingdom. And that when those Jews rejected Jesus, in other words, they said, we don't want to come to his party. We don't want to follow him. That was when the door was opened for people who were not Jews to come in and be part of God's family. Does that make sense? Now, when I look at the parable, yeah, that seems to me to be the primary meaning. The story is steeped in Jewish tradition and heritage, and we we know how the Jewish rejection of Jesus has opened the door for all the nations to come to Jesus. Makes sense. Here's another observation. Those who are invited to the kingdom party, Jews or others, have always come up with lame excuses for rejecting the invitation and not coming. That isn't just a Jewish thing. They are not the only ones that reject Jesus as the Messiah. For the last 2,000 years, people of all race and heritage have rejected Jesus as the king. Now, I'm going to state the obvious about this parable and about the reality. There are a lot of people in this world who think that there are more important things to do than respond to the call of God. That may be true for people seated in this room today. I don't know. That's between you and God. Are you making excuses about responding to his call on your life? Because he calls all of us. He has continued to call. There are some people who are so self-absorbed, they are completely oblivious to the reality of a creator God who became one of us. No, I'm busy living my life, living my best life. It takes a lot of time to live my best life, a lot of attention. And there are others who are, I think, so caught up with being religious and trying to impress God in some way that they have missed the point of grace altogether. They're just sort of playing church in order to get on God's good side. And as the story of Jesus, this story of Jesus makes clear, both of those groups of people do so at their own peril. No doubt. But you guys know, and I've told you this a bunch through the years, and there are tons of Bible scholars that are way smarter than I am. And I try to read as much as I can. I try to compare notes. And I try to get to the bottom of truth the best that I can. But there are tons of them that are smarter than me who have always given their observations on what these parables mean. But of all of the things that Jesus could be saying in this parable, here is my one big takeaway from this parable. And you can take it for what it's worth. I think we're all probably going to be at least a little surprised at who gets in the end. If we use the idea of going to heaven, going to our final destination after we pass from this earth, I think this parable paints a picture for me that all of the people who are absolutely certain they're in are going to get there and go, whoa, wait a minute. How did he get in? There are going to be other people that are going, I was told all along that they didn't get in. Why are they here? How come? How come they're here? In this story, the king sent his servants out and, well, check it out. Go ahead and put up that first verse in verse 10. So the servants went out into the streets and gathered all the people they could find, both good and bad, and the wedding hall was filled with guests. You see, when the king's guests don't show up the first time, he doesn't cancel the party. That's what I would do. I'd cut my losses, take my money, and go. Not this king. He goes, My son is going to have a party. No, he just invites more guests. And he has his servants go out and pull people off the street. Here in my head, this is what I'm seeing. His servants pull off homeless people and addicts and fishermen and swindlers and thieves, tax collectors, if you remember that from last week. Pulls in families with children and small town merchants and teachers and retirees, people who have gone bankrupt, people who have more money than they know what to do with. All of these people are somehow pulled into the party, and the king is standing at the door and welcoming them in. The good and the bad, the simple, the unworthy, the unprepared, the unqualified. You know who gets invited in? You. Me. Some people who think that they deserve to be at the party won't be. This parable makes that abundantly clear. Others, the unlikely, the bad, those are the ones that will be welcomed in. And I can't help but think, as I ponder the life of Jesus and how he acted, Jesus always looked at people differently than religious people look at them. He always did. Religious people always think that they've got it all figured out. They've got the answers. And they can be judge and jury. And Jesus somehow goes, nah, I got a different way of doing things. Now, if I stopped right there and I were you, I would have 1,000 questions right now. Okay? I'm serious. I'd have 1,000 questions. But what about you mean that? Don't get hung up with that part of it. Here's part of the twist to the story. Such a cool story. Getting into this party is not about being the right people or being good enough to deserve a ticket. In fact, how you get into this party is the surprise ending to this parable. Now, here's the part of the story that I think gets a little harder to understand. Jesus says that the king came out to meet his guests, and he noticed a man who was not wearing the proper clothes to come to the wedding banquet. He wasn't dressed right. Here's what it looks like in the passage in verse 12. It says, King goes, friend, how did you get in here without wedding clothes? And it says the man was speechless. Now I picture he's talking to one of those people that were just drug in off the street. They didn't have time to go home and change. They just came in as they were. The requirement for getting into the wedding party is to have the right clothes. That was the requirement. You got to have the right clothes on to get in. Wedding hosts of that day, historically we can read about this. One of the things they did is at a wedding reception, they provided the right kind of clothes for people to come to the wedding reception. Have any of you, this happens to guys, I don't know what they do with women at these places where you're supposed to come dressed appropriately. And you go to these places, and if the guy is not dressed appropriately, they'll hand him a tie. You go put on the tie. Well, that's kind of what's going on at this wedding reception. They had clothing that they were supposed to put on to be able to come into the wedding reception. It had to be just right. Not to wear them, not to wear the right wedding clothes would either be some real arrogance or some real ignorance. You got to have the right clothes. And the story ends with these two verses, 13 and 14. It says, then the king told the attendants, and he's talking about the man who showed up without the right clothes, tie him hand and foot and throw him outside into the darkness where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. For many are invited, but few are chosen. If I am that dude that just got thrown out into the darkness, I'm going, for not the right clothes? Is this not a little bit of an overreaction? I mean, really, this is my fate, is to be thrown out onto the street, into the darkness, where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth, all because I didn't have a tie on? Listen to that again. The king said to tie him up, throw him outside into the darkness, for many are invited, but few are chosen. Now that line is the one where we really get to understand that this parable is about Jews and non-Jews. Okay, I think that's the heart of it. But I don't think that's the heart of it for us. I think there's a message here for all of us. The man gets tossed out into the street and he is speechless. That's what it says. He is speechless. He's appalled. He's blown away. Just like many will be when they figure out what it takes to be at the grand wedding party that God throws, celebrating his son. Speechless is what all of us are going to be as we stand at the entrance to the party. And ultimately, we're all going to stand speechless, either because of wonder and adoration when we finally see the King face to face, or we are going to be standing speechless and in shock and anguish because we recognize we don't have the right clothes on. All over what we are wearing. Now, I'm going to stop here. We're going to continue on next week with a little bit about what it means to wear the right clothing. But for now, let's just close with this. Look how the Apostle Paul says it. Years later, after Jesus has given this parable, Paul writes this in Galatians chapter 3. And just to understand, he's talking about the same thing. So in Christ Jesus, you are all children of God through faith. For all of you who are baptized into Christ have clothed yourself with Christ. If I were going to write it the way that the gospel writer said, it says, for all of you who are baptized into Christ, you've got the right clothing on to come to the party. Right clothing is being clothed with Christ, being covered with Christ, being dressed with Christ. We come to our weekly time of sharing communion. You guys can go back and get ready. And I just want you to take a moment today. So many questions. I realize I'm leaving you hanging on some things, but I promise we'll come back at it. But I just want you to be able to sit here in this moment, look back, remember what Jesus has done for you on the cross. Don't ever forget that many are invited, but few are chosen. The only ones that are chosen to go to the banquet are the ones that are dressed right. It's pretty cool to know that we all have the choice to put on the right clothes. That's what we remember. That's what we celebrate when we take the bread and we take the juice and experience the remembrance of communion, of what Jesus has done for us. Take a few moments. There's some things that you can follow along up on the screen that may help you, some prayers and so forth. Go to him. Be honest with him.